In this video, I'll demonstrate how to paint with watercolor and table salt. First, you can start by cutting out your car, and then after you cut it out, you can get a clean white paper background. One thing I was thinking about was that in the PowerPoint, the backgrounds on the black paper did look really neat. I liked how the car stood out in front of them. So if you want to use a black paper instead, and if you have oil pastels and you just want to color the black background with oil pastels, please go for it. But if you don't have black paper and you have watercolor, I recommend trying this technique. It's really fun. You'll need a little cup of table salt too, so maybe ask an adult or family member to help gather supplies. Okay, so something else you'll need besides table salt is something to draw with. I just used a black marker and some crayons. First I started with a gentle curved hill. Now I'm using a white oil pastel, or you can use white crayon to make snow. Press hard and build up the crayon thick. It'll show through the paint. I added some quick lines. You could make it look like a road if you want. Now I'm making simple shapes to show pine trees. If you want your shapes more realistic, you could do a quick Google image search or look out the window if there's a pine tree in your yard. I tried to make the pine trees in the distance look a little smaller because they're farther away. I'm adding quick lines to my tree with crayon. This is just going to give it a little extra color and texture before I paint. Okay, when making this watercolor and salt technique, make sure you use a lot of water in your paint. If you look closely at my watercolors, you can see there's a puddle on top of the color. That way, when I dip my brush, I'm getting a lot of water. When you sprinkle salt, all of the water and the color absorbs into the salt. Well, not all of it, but some of it does, and it leaves a really cool visual effect. Some spots are going to look a little lighter and brighter. It might even look like snowy specks of snow in the distance. For this to work, you want to paint a little, then sprinkle. Paint a little, and then sprinkle. Make sure not to paint where you've already put salt. Let the salt just sit there and do its thing, okay? You may be wondering how long it takes to dry. When I was finished painting, my picture sat and dried for about an hour to an hour and a half. So try not to touch it, even though it probably looks tempting. If you do paint a little bit where there's already salt, it won't be a problem, but it works better if you try to just put the color on, sprinkle the salt, and leave it alone. I used this technique on the trees as well. And then I think I even used the technique on the tree trunks. Remember, use lots of water so that the salt has something to absorb. You can mix colors too. You can see I put some blue and green together so that I got more of a turquoise green. I decided that the snow looked a little plain, so I used some very light blue lines to look like shadows. Find something to mix on. Add lots of water in a puddle and one little dip of color, and you can get a very light version of the color. I tried to spread out the blue so that it looked kind of like a little shadow on the snow. I hope you enjoy using this salt technique. It's a really fun thing to do with watercolor. Once it dried, I got a brown paper bag and I wiped all of the salt into the bag. I don't think it recorded that part, so you can see I just used something to put the salt in. You can use a trash can. Just make sure you don't get it everywhere, all over your house. I hope you enjoyed this fun technique. When you're finished, you can post a picture on Padlet. I can't wait to see how these come out. Happy winter!